On this Monday night, the world reacts to Russian atrocities.
War crimes have taken place.
The horror of what happened and the outrage.
This guy is brutal.
What more is the West willing to do? And what's left of the besieged city of Mariupol as a Red Cross convoy again fails to get through? Now or never.
We are on a fast track to climate disaster.
Running out of options to hit climate goals, the latest UN report. Plus, connection problems.
It deepens the digital divide.
Who's left out of the plan to make high-speed internet more affordable?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It is hard to put into words the mounting evidence Russian forces are slaughtering civilians in Ukraine. The images emerging are sickening and hard to look at. Even Ukraine's president, who has seen so much in the 39 days since Russia invaded, had trouble taking in the atrocities in Bucha, a small city northwest of Kyiv. The bodies of civilians shot at close range, many with bound hands or feet, scattered on the streets. These are war crimes, Volodymyr Zelensky says, and will be recognized by the world as genocide. As Russian soldiers retreat from Ukrainian towns around the capital and regroup, their tactics are being laid bare.
You may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter, you saw what happened to Bucha. This warrants him, he is a war criminal.
There is outrage around the world, though from the Kremlin, nothing but denials and even claims the corpses in video footage are actors participating in a hoax to discredit Russia. Our coverage tonight begins with Redmond Shannon.
Exactly.
The pain in Bucha is everywhere. This woman spent days searching for her husband. After 2 weeks, she found him among bodies in their building's basement. Neighbours helped her to dig his grave in the garden below their home. I recognised him by his shoes, she says. He had been shot in the head, mutilated, tortured. Hers is just one account of possible war crimes in Bucha, a small city in the suburbs of Kyiv. Ukrainian authorities say hundreds of civilians have been killed here since Russian troops were pushed back. Many of the dead found in the street, some with their hands tied. This apparent mass grave on the grounds of a local church.
Reports emerging from this and other areas raise serious and disturbing questions about possible war crimes.
President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Bucha Monday. He says his government is aware of thousands of murders and rapes, calling them more than war crimes. He says it's genocide. Zelensky says the longer the conflict continues, the more difficult these discoveries will make peace talks. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed the video corroborated by journalists as fake and staged. The Kremlin doubling down on misinformation and denials. Lavrov claims Russian troops left the Bucha area on March 31st, but on that date, satellite photos already show the mass grave has been dug. On Russian state TV, one pundit suggested Britain could be involved in staging the events in Bucha. In Warsaw, a grim warning from Ukraine's foreign minister.
And I can tell you without an exaggeration, but with great sorrow, that the situation in Mariupol is much worse compared to what we've seen in Bucha.
The mayor of Mariupol says his city is now 90% destroyed. As Russia shifts focus to the east, Ukraine says the Kremlin now wants to capture the second city of Kharkiv, and that Russia is looking to mobilise 60,000 extra reservists. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister calls what happened in Bucha abhorrent and senseless. Melanie Joly is in Helsinki meeting her Finnish counterpart.
These are clearly war crimes. These are clearly crimes against humanity. So yes, there will be more sanctions announced by Canada against Russian and Belarusian individuals and entities. This will come very soon. We know we have to do more, and we will be doing more.
She says Canada will target 18 more Russians and Belarusians for their roles in Russia's illegal invasion. As Jackson Proskow reports, the question is, how much further is the world willing to go to push back? Is there a tipping point that will trigger military intervention? And another warning, some of the content in his story is disturbing.
The images of lifeless bodies and bound hands may finally force the world to act.
You saw what happened in Bucha. This warrants him, he is a war criminal.
In Washington, President Joe Biden vowed swift new sanctions and directly called for prosecution of Vladimir Putin and his regime.
We have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight. And we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial.
Across Europe, more fast moves to further isolate Moscow. Lithuania told the Russian ambassador to leave. Germany and France expelled dozens of Russian diplomats. The EU vowed deeper sanctions after seeing evidence of atrocities.
We will advance as a matter of urgency the work on further sanctions against Kremlin's murderous war machinery.
Yet Ukraine's cries of genocide have not compelled any country to change its position on direct military involvement.
We have to forget about half measures. You cannot impose sanctions with your left hand and trade with Russia with your right hand.
During a joint appearance with the Ukrainian foreign minister, the British foreign secretary, like many Western leaders, was reluctant to put a label on Russia's actions.
Now, as to the question of genocide, that is a matter for the courts to determine. But what I want to be very clear about is the UK is taking the maximum approach. We're taking the maximum approach on sanctions.
It all leaves open the question of how far Russia must go before the West steps in. The desire for a negotiated peace may supersede calls for rapid prosecutions.
Pragmatically, there are people who worry about pursuing accountability before you have a peace settlement.
Yet whatever else is revealed by the Russian retreat may leave the world with no choice but to take the kind of direct action they have vowed to avoid. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
A humanitarian convoy has still not been able to reach the besieged city of Mariupol. Today, the Red Cross says its team is being held just west of the city. The convoy has made several failed attempts to deliver humanitarian aid and bring people to safety. Mariupol's mayor says 130,000 people are still trapped under dire conditions. Ukrainian officials have accused Russian troops of forcibly deporting several thousand residents to Russia. The EU says it is now weighing a full ban on Russian energy imports. It is a sticking point, though, as some nations argue their economies are dependent on Russian oil and coal. The world's dependence on fossil fuels is having an irreversible impact on our climate. And the latest UN climate report warns there is little time left for governments to live up to their commitments to slash greenhouse gas emissions. The UN Secretary General used some blunt words today.
Government and business leaders are saying one thing but doing another. Simply put, they are lying. And the results will be catastrophic.
The latest climate report warns the next few years are critical. Eric Sorensen reports on the findings and the proposed solutions.
It is a now or never moment to avoid the worst effects of climate change. A major UN report describes a litany of inadequate measures and broken government promises.
The empty pledges that put us firmly on track towards an unlivable world.
From 2010 to 2019, total emissions for all human-caused greenhouse gases kept rising. Fossil fuel and industry with the largest carbon footprint, 64% of emissions. The Intergovernmental Panel says greenhouse gases must peak by 2025. And be reduced by almost 45% by 2030 to limit global warming to the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. The impacts are everywhere: heat waves and wildfires, extreme storms and floods, melting ice and permafrost, and rising sea levels. British Columbia alone was whiplashed by blistering heat and torrential rains and floods last year. Climate advocates say Canada is a major culprit supporting fossil fuel production.
We have contributed massively to overconsumption, overexploitation of resources. And for a country as wealthy as Canada, I think we need to look ourselves in the mirror.
Ottawa suggests this country's energy production cannot be business as usual.
It only reinforces the urgent requirement for energy sector in every region and every jurisdiction to speed up the decarbonization of our economies.
One hopeful development: clean energy is becoming more affordable every year. The UN report says unit costs have fallen dramatically since 2010, 85% for solar energy, 55% for wind, and 85% for electric batteries. But the dilemma is what to do in the short term. There's a need for oil and gas right now, a shortage made worse by the war in Ukraine.
There's benefits to diversifying our energy supply by building more of these new clean energy projects. But the real challenge is, but do we keep building all these fossil fuel projects?
This month, Ottawa will decide on a major oil project off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, which will send a strong signal, one way or the other, about Canada's approach to energy and climate change. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
British Columbia's Premier John Horgan revealed today he's tested positive for COVID-19. In a tweet, Horgan said his symptoms are mild thanks to being fully vaccinated. The 62-year-old recently underwent treatment for throat cancer. He is one of thousands of Canadians finding themselves with COVID right now. As the latest variant spreads, hospital and ICU admissions are beginning to creep up. At the same time, testing has stopped, mask mandates have dropped, and vaccine uptake has slowed. Now the World Health Organization is warning of a new, even more transmissible recombinant strain called XE. Jamie Maracher explains what all this means for you.
Frontline health workers are growing frustrated, watching COVID infection rates rise while more masks come off.
We removed precautions at the very worst time as a new wave was about to start.
A lost layer of protection as another means stalls. Just 47% of Canadians have had a booster dose.
We need to get rid of this idea that being fully or adequately vaccinated is anything less than 3. That's wrong. So if you are not at 3, you are not adequately vaccinated.
The federal government still considers a double dose fully vaccinated. With no plans to make a change, officials are mulling recommendations for 4th doses for those over 50. Experts are also hanging hopes on strain-specific vaccines, seeing success in clinical trials.
Going forward, this is going to be tied really closely to pathogen surveillance.
Instead of relying on PCR testing, provinces are tracking wastewater as well as hospital and ICU numbers. It revealed Omicron's subvariant BA.2 is on the rise, but severity of illness isn't so far. Other countries have seen similar trends, but they're showing COVID isn't latent. The WHO is now warning of a new strain out of the UK, XE, a recombination of Omicron's BA.1 and BA.2 subvariants. It's believed to be 10% more transmissible than BA.2, which is causing the latest surge.
Because we're giving COVID a chance for this to happen, the ball's no longer in our court. The ball's now in the virus's court.
This is kind of a do-it-yourself pandemic. If you have any symptoms, stay away and protect other people.
More reason to stay vigilant, keep masks on, and minimize spread. Jamie Maracher, Global News, Toronto.
In Hong Kong, cases of COVID-19 are finally beginning to decline after the worst wave of COVID-19 there. The territory's leader, Carrie Lam, has been widely criticized for her handling of the pandemic, and today she said she won't seek re-election. Lam says she's stepping down in order to spend more time with family. Her 5-year term as chief executive has been tumultuous. There were citywide protests in 2019 over an extradition bill with mainland China that led Beijing to implement a national security law that cracked down on democratic opposition. And her decision to follow China's strict zero COVID policy has dealt a blow to Hong Kong's economy. Lowering the cost of high-speed internet coming up. Who's eligible for Ottawa's cheaper plan to access the web? Elon Musk has plenty of followers on Twitter, and now he is also the company's largest shareholder. The Tesla and SpaceX founder bought 9.2% of the social media site last month, a stake valued at nearly $3 billion US. The world's richest man is no stranger to the platform. Of course, he has more than 80 million followers, and he has a tendency to tweet some controversial, sometimes inflammatory things. Last week, for example, he raised questions about free speech on the site, and he tweeted he was giving serious thought to creating a whole new platform. Well, during the isolation of the pandemic, home internet became a lifeline for many, and more seniors in particular are logging on for the first time. But with the high cost of connecting, it's not something every Canadian can afford. As Abigail Beeman reports, the federal government is taking another step towards its commitment to get everyone online with high-speed internet by 2030.
Stephanie Graham and her husband rely on the internet for everything from Zooming grandchildren to making medical appointments.
My husband just got out of the hospital in December. He nearly lost his leg. And the only way we could get appointments with doctors is by the internet. All of the doctors are asking for internet.
They earn less than $40,000 a year and are disappointed they don't qualify for the newly expanded affordable internet program.
Well, for one thing, I could get my bottom teeth fixed.
Connecting Families 2.0 is now for low-income families and seniors who receive either the Maximum Canada Child Benefit or the Maximum Guaranteed Income Supplement. At $20 a month, the government is promising internet speeds 5 and 10 times faster than the previous $10 plan, which people can still access if they wish. Data doubles to 200 gigabytes per month. 14 internet service providers are on board.
We frequently hear that people in Canada pay some of the highest prices in the world for internet and cell phone connectivity.
Advocacy groups applaud the move but are calling for expansions to the eligibility list and the data limit.
For the internet of 2022, that simply isn't enough. It deepens the digital divide.
We would certainly like to see this expanded to anyone who qualifies for the GIS at all. And of course, on a go forward basis to make sure that the quality of the internet that they're getting is also going to be good.
Experts say the number of seniors who qualify is not big, and exactly how many people will be helped is not clear. Anyone eligible will be sent a letter. Those letters have already gone out, but the government isn't saying how many were issued. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Bracing for the federal budget ahead, the potential billions in new spending.
You're watching Global National.
Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is putting the finishing touches on the latest federal budget. It is set to be delivered on Thursday with plenty of demands for new spending and investments in everything from housing to dental care to defense. David Aiken looks at what's going into the equation of the upcoming budget.
$10 a day childcare right across the country.
This week's budget got its start on last summer's campaign trail, with a Liberal election platform stuffed with $50 billion in new spending promises.
Our government was re-elected on a commitment to grow our economy, make life more affordable, and to continue building a Canada where nobody gets left behind.
But since then, a deal with Jagmeet Singh's NDP to implement a national pharmacare and national dental care program. Price tag could eventually be $13 billion a year.
For dental care, we are looking for enough funding to phase in phase one of the plan, which is for all children under 12 who don't have coverage who need it most. And that we're fairly confident will be in the budget.
Plus, a war in Ukraine bringing renewed pressure on Canada to boost defense spending to the NATO target of 2% of GDP. For Canada to do that, Freeland must find another $20 billion a year. And then there's provincial governments continuing to push for billions more in annual federal health transfers.
I don't envy the government, but they've got to squeeze that much in political commitments into a really small space and remain fiscally sustainable without increasing taxes.
Now, high oil prices and better than expected economic growth have given Ottawa what forecasters say could be an extra $7 to $13 billion in revenue, and that is extra money Freeland will definitely need. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa, thank you. War crimes being documented as they unfold. Next, the impact of the brutality in Bucha. There are some things we should never get used to seeing. Those things are unfolding in Ukraine right now. Vladimir Putin has said Ukraine as a nation does not exist, that the land belongs to Russia. And those who get in the way of that plan, including civilians, including women and children, are being killed. Evidence of war crimes is mounting and being compiled in real time. Mike Armstrong reports, and a warning, some of the video is difficult to watch.
It is still very early in the process, but researchers investigating possible war crimes in Bucha are already finding evidence that points to something horrible. Bodies that are being recovered are having to have their hands unbound.
We have a number of people
who appear to have been killed with their hands bound behind their backs using plastic zip ties.
At the local church, no one knows exactly how many bodies are in the fresh mass graves. There is, however, a count from one day, March 10th. The priest says at least 68 bodies were collected from around town on that day and buried. He says people were killed trying to leave and their bodies were in the streets. They couldn't take them to the cemetery. Going there was too dangerous. The town's mayor says any war is a crime, but there are still supposed to be rules. The way his citizens were treated was something else. He says soldiers were deliberately killing civilians and that the only way he can describe it is genocide. That same word was used by Ukraine's president Monday as he visited Bucha. Vladimir Zelensky says walking the streets, understanding what happened, makes negotiating with the Russian side tougher. Zelensky says they're finding bodies in barrels and basements, tortured and executed, war crimes one after another. There are unimaginable scenes in just about every direction. Bodies on highways, in this case a family buried together, at least partially. According to locals, it was the head of the village with her son and husband. They would have been killed by Russian soldiers who believed they were helping Ukrainian troops. Investigators have a great deal of work ahead of them. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. We leave you tonight with some sound and reflection from a Ukrainian musician. His name is Mark Demyanchenko. He took his guitar to the rubble of Kyiv, where he lives, one of the many once vibrant places in Ukraine, now reduced to a shadow of what it once was. We wish peace to everyone, the 20-year-old says, because without peace, life is very difficult. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow.